pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, meeting minutes were distributed for the September 4th meeting. Any amendments? Any adjustments?
Move to accept this as presented.
I second.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? I guess I should wait. Sorry, I'm trying to move along. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, thank you, then motion is passed. Correspondence.
Received mail from the Internal Revenue Service about filing Form 990 that was forwarded to the treasurer. Erie Community College South Campus, change of course sponsorship administration was submitted, that was filed. Also from Erie Community College South Campus, applications for courses at ECC North. State of New York Department of Corrections, a PAD-QI report that was forwarded on to OPC. United States Postal Service, return receipt for documents delivered on behalf of the council to New York State Department of Health, Bureau of EMS. Niagara Medical Management Consultants, a PAD application forwarded to OPC. Erie County EMS course applications. Wyoming Community Emergency Services course applications. Wendy Royce began her invoice for stenographic services for the last council meeting. Niagara Medical Management Consultants PAD application forwarded to OPC. Canisius College PAD application forwarded to OPC. Check from New York State Department of Taxation and Finance in the sum of $1,979.91 forwarded to the treasurer. Erie Community South Campus course applications, and Niagara Medical Management, a PAD application forwarded to OPC.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on. Treasurer's report.
That was mailed out, or emailed out. We got the 1,900 from the state for first quarter this year. I'm still waiting on Q4 of last year, which supposedly the state sent out the same time, but I haven't seen it yet.
Just I stopped today, there was nothing.
So that's in limbo someplace. This year so far we spent almost $15,000, $15,988, and I've got another 7,600 pending. So that takes care of those. Really bought all 990s, Ben's files, that's all taken care of. That's all I've got. Spent 2,500. $4,000 on vital signs towards people's applications and food supplies. But there's $1,600 out there that I haven't seen, so I don't know what that is. Greg said he paid for it with our card, but the money never cleared our bank, so I don't know what that is.
Okay.
So maybe it's a freebie.
And that had to do with vital signs registration?
Well, that $1,600 is the trinkets and whatever.
Okay.
So maybe it's a freebie. I don't know.
Any questions on the treasurer's report? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept? A motion? Okay, I was gonna say a couple motions back here. And second, Philip? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, it's accepted. Medical Advisory Committee. Any noteworthy information coming forward?
Probably just that the provider privilege in continuing medical education policy is still moving forward. Due date for the provider privilege applications was August 1st. At the September meeting, they decided they would make a determination of what to do with the agencies that hadn't responded by the November REMAC meeting, and that could involve taking the entire agency offline as an EMS agency. It could include up to that. So we'll know more in November. I have a list attached to my report of all the agencies that have not responded. There's only one in Wyoming County, and there are 38 in Erie County.
Anybody else have anything to contribute for the medical advisory committee? Okay, moving forward, pre-hospital advisory committee, Mr. Gill. Please. Pardon? Nothing?
Oh, I'm chewing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No report, madam.
Okay. State council, we did have a meeting. It is represented very well with the meeting minutes that were distributed. I think you distributed them for me. I take minutes while I'm at the meeting, and Scott does as well, and usually he'll send them to me, and I accept everything that he's got. There are just a few maybe committees that I attended, but for the most part, it's great, and I appreciate it. Next meeting is in January. John Adolph, Erie County.
Our budget went through status quo. We're running our traditional courses. Scott, if we could get that list, we'll try and pound the pavement a little bit. So, Greg, anything else to add?
No.
Okay. Wyoming County.
Nothing.
Okay. Western New York Stress.
I apologize. Greg always took care of that.
I know.
mean to do that, and I keep forgetting.
I used to get the reports, but I don't any longer. Mr. Gill, sir.
Greg Skibisky.
What about it?
He used to take care of that, not this group.
Yes, sir. I know that, sir.
For your-
Thank you.
We did one the other night for Niagara County.
Have you been very active or no?
Other than that one, I'm not sure what we've had. We went up for the fatal that they had on for the dump truck and the pickup truck.
Okay. Committee reports. I don't see Ann. She's actually teaching a class. Membership, I do know that we received a few applications and handed out some applications at the Vital Signs booth. She is reviewing current active status or inactive status on both rosters for Wyoming and Erie, and is in the process of notifying those people that are inactive so that we can bring new people on and change to alternates. CON committee, John Adolph.
All right, prior to the meeting we met, there's an application for BLSFR that's been submitted by the Ucrest Fire Company. And we had an opportunity to review it on October 16th with Jim Mahalko, and then again with the committee this evening. I'd like to entertain a motion that the council go on record supporting. Let me give you the language from the state. Anyway, we need to go on the record endorsing that. The motion though should qualify that at such time as they're recognized by the REMAC, because they have to go for similar recognition from REMAC. Their PAD was up, application and notice of intent was updated as part of this package. Their medical director verification form was updated as part of this package. So just to make sure we're covering all the bases, it should be on the agenda 2 weeks from today at the REMAC. So we would endorse it contingent upon a similar endorsement from REMAC.
Okay, so we have a motion to endorse and accept the CON application.
Support support the application
in
and notify New York
contingent
State
upon,
upon endorsement of the rate.
okay, that's the first, do I have a second for that motion? Madonna? Any discussion?
And
Mr. Gill?
Could there be an issue with the fact that they're outstanding on the provider privileges sheet?
So the interesting part of that is
they are not.
that they are not a recognized BLSFR. This has been kind of a disaster to try to get to the bottom of it, because we're compiling information that's gotten from the Bureau, plus with old information. I mean, sadly, the Bureau's information is not current, and that's why they shouldn't even be on that list, I guess is my point, because they're not even a recognized BLSFR.
Right, until such time as the state says they're an agency, they're not
Right.
employers, because they're not an agency.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, next up is Henrietta.
Applications received and filed.
So close. Bylaws, Mr. Glass.
Funny thing about these bylaws. Humorous story. Before I do that, on the provider privileges, I see Highland on there. There's an individual who's still needs to put the application in because that individual just received it the other day, so Highland will be complying within a couple of days. As soon as that individual can find his dates that he was formerly employed by. On the bylaws, if everyone remembers, we changed our bylaws to reflect the fiscal term from April to March. And in doing so, we changed that to have the official business year from April 1st to March 31st, and the officers' terms from April 1st to March 31st. So when we get down to new business where it says nominations, we won't be holding elections tonight because in the bylaws, we changed that to the new officers would take over on April 1st. However, in the bylaws, when they were cut and pasted and redone, apparently on page 6 there's a number of omissions that I thought I had conquered, and I'll be handy to, I probably should do this when I'm drinking scotch. So, we already voted on the verbiage, I just need to go back and change that verbiage to reflect what we had originally voted on. So, tonight, we will be, and I believe at the last meeting, you named a nominating committee. I know I was one of them, but I don't remember who from Wyoming County was. And I couldn't find the notes.
Okay, we'll
So if you want to do
research
that again, I will volunteer for your county. So what we can do tonight, when we get to that, under new business, we'll take nominations from the floor, and I'll also give individuals who may not be here tonight an opportunity to email their intent. You can nominate yourself, you don't have to have somebody nominate you. In Robert's rules, there's that provision. So we'll put a notice out after the meeting, and we'll put a cutoff date when they should be. So again, tonight will be nominations. We'll take nominations from the floor to start. I would suggest that in order for the nominating committee to gather the names and make sure that those candidates are qualified, I believe the cutoff date should probably be no later than December 15th to receive nominations. I would propose that. And then at the January meeting, the nominating committee will provide a slate of eligible candidates.
Okay.
The only other thing that I would like us to do tonight, and we can because procedure guidelines, so it's not a bylaw change, just in the procedures. In the past, under meeting attendance, for meeting attendance. B, I'll read it the way it states right now. A council member requesting to be excused shall notify the REMS office or the chair or the secretary before the start of the meeting. I would like to propose a motion that we change REMS office to the Erie County EMS office. There's always somebody there, can take a message if that's agreeable to the body.
As long as they're willing to publish their phone number to go along with that, so that people know how to get a hold of them. They're willing to take on that responsibility, I think that's a great alternative.
We'll publish it. We'll publish Mr. Gill's cell phone.
Good, 'cause I don't have it.
So that was in the form of a motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? He's got a motion. What?
All in favor?
Any discussion? I didn't hear any. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Glass, would you state the motion?
That the ways to be excused under the procedural guidelines of the council be amended to exclude shall notify the REMS office, and in place of the REMS office, the chair or the secretary, in place of REMS, we put the Erie County EMS office. And I'll put that number in the guidelines. And I will redo by the end of the week the omissions, and I'll send it to the secretary, and they can, he can send that out to everybody.
When the meeting minutes get typed up, it might be a good idea to put them right in the meeting minutes, the phone number.
I apologize for the inconvenience, I don't know how that happened. Like I said, I've gone through these several times, and I just missed that right. So again, for the bylaw, there's nothing that's new language. Well, it is new language, but it's nothing new language tonight. It's language that we already agreed on and voted on. It just somehow got omitted from the actual bylaw.
So the action we need to take tonight,
It's just what we did.
okay, thank you.
And then we'll do nominations. You need to appoint a nominating committee, and then we'll do under new business nominations.
I was thinking, and I don't wanna commit to her, but I was thinking it was Ann because she was on the membership committee, and I thought you were on the,
And I can-
side. I will check with her, but in the meantime, I will make that committee, make up, is there anybody else who'd like to serve on that committee? I know, everybody's excited, okay.
Breeze from the hands going up.
Okay, so that's bylaws, Mr. Gill, awards and PR, thank you for the work that you did for the vital signs booth.
It's over. I don't think you'll be seeing it in Buffalo anytime soon. There was a decrease in the attendance. I think I was told somewhere around 1,300, and there was a reduction in the number of vendors that came to the point where they were actually calling people the week before and offering space for free. Other than that, I didn't get an opportunity to hear any of the programs. I was in the booth, and thanks very much for the folks who helped out in the booth. Setup wasn't as difficult as I thought. It was 2 boxes. 2 boxes and we had to kill 4 hours. That was a little tough, but another year down. Everybody gets a couple of pens. I gave out pens this year on behalf of the council. Cost us a little money, but they were well liked. Thank you. It's got the stylus, it's got a pen, it's got a light to it, and a little computer stylus thing. We didn't go so far as to buy the job shirts. We approved $70 a person for job shirts, but the budget seemed kind of tight considering every time I talked to Neil, he cried. So we held up on that for now until we see where the money falls. But other than that, it's another year down.
Excellent, thank you. Program agency.
Report was available up on the table here, if anybody needs a copy, we'll grab it at the end, but I'm just gonna hit some of the key points. We've already talked about the provider privilege application. We have a reduced tuition PHTLS course that we hope is going to run in Strikersville, which is November 16th and 17th. It's an $80 tuition for that. Normally the tuition on those programs is around $180, so there's significant savings. We do have to make a decision if the course is going to run. The enrollment is really bad right now, so if you know of anyone who might be intending to take that course, they need to register by tomorrow because I have to make the decision by tomorrow because I have the national faculty that I have to bring in that has a very significant expense to that if we're not going to run it. So our REMAC ALS protocols were approved at CMAC and SEMSCO at the October meeting. There were a few changes, and probably something that was most interesting that happened with that is they are requiring agencies, regions, and medical directors to allow to have providers work to the full capacity. So in other words, regions can't have a protocol where you have a level of care that can function, let's say, to this level, but the region only wants them to function to this level. They're not allowing that anymore. You have to give full privilege to that. So one of the things that they added in was needle decompression for AEMTs, and it was something that was not in our protocols. Everything else, we allowed AEMTs to do procedures that were covered in the national scope for the AEMT level. There were other regions, so we only had minor changes. There were other regions that did not do that. AEMTs, maybe they didn't want them to give, I don't know, Narcan as an example, but they were then forced to add that into their protocol because they said that the regions do not have the ability to scale it back. So it's kind of an interesting discussion of what took place. I don't know if Cheryl might be able to shed even a little bit more light on that as your representative, but just understand that that's kind of the that's the direction of the day, so to speak. So, okay, go ahead.
Can the individual medical directors rule it out?
It doesn't sound like they can. It doesn't sound like they can.
I think they're very much, what I'm hearing is they very much want us to standardize. If you are going to go to national standards, you're going to go to national standards, hence the survey that they did with controlled substances. You know, you can't, Scott's probably tired of hearing me say this, but I likened it to having a pumper called to a scene in a 911 call. You're going to say, gee, do I want a pumper or do I want a pumper with water? It's the same thing here. Are you going to call an ALS squad, and are you going to call an ALS squad, and do they have medicine on board? And the CMAC was really firm about that. Those doctors, this is your protocols, and this is the standard, and your pre-hospital care protocols say this, you better have those drugs on board. You better be able to take care of the airways, you better be able to take care of pain management, and if you can't, then maybe that's not the level of care you should be responding to, so.
I guess if I could interject an opinion, there's absolutely no reason to have 18 different regional protocols if this is what we're going to do. We should have one statewide ALS protocol, because if you're going to require everybody to function at a certain level, then why do we have 18 different protocols? And we don't, because there are now, I think, 6 regions in the central to eastern and downstate region that they've all adopted the same protocol. Our region did look at it, but quite frankly, there is the CC level of care in that region. They do not function anywhere near to the level that they do in ours, and that would create a big issue, especially in the southwestern region where CCs are still very prevalent. But it was very interesting. What's more interesting, or just as interesting even though to me, is we are doing national standards. They don't want to allow specialty things like cardiac monitoring when it's not in the scope of practice, but yet they have approved IV push for AEMTs. It's not in their protocol, and likewise, the chest decompression is not in the AEMT curriculum, but that has been added in, and that was actually the one thing that our region was told that we had to add in was needle decompression at the AEMT level. So, it's pretty interesting what's happened, and I don't know. We'll see if if it's the flavor forever. And along the same line, there was a discussion. About instructors utilizing, Andy Johnson talked about this, instructors utilizing books and materials or teaching content that is above and beyond what is required in a certain level. And there was an instance where there was I believe it was an AEMT instructor, not in this region, but in another part of the state, who was requiring a paramedic textbook for the course. And the instructor was then advised that they absolutely could not utilize a paramedic textbook for that course. They could only use an AEMT text. Likewise, they cannot teach any material that is not covered in that scope. So for the course sponsors who are in the room too, probably the take home on that is make sure that, your content is consistent. It did create some issues. I guess this instructor actually quit. And then they had nobody to teach the class. But they're not backing down on it. They're very firm that this is the direction it's going. You're going to teach no more and no less than what is in the scope and what your providers are going to do in the region. So that's very different than past practice, I've got to tell you, just from my almost 20 years being around. So we've done a number of outreach trainings. One specifically that's scheduled to come up. No cost for this. The transition to national standards for paramedics, we're doing that, 2 locations. One is a Twin City ambulance this Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to noon at their office on Commerce Drive in Amherst. And then another one is going to be at Orchard Park Central, and that is going to be from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night on next Monday, November 11th. Any paramedic level providers who need the paramedic transition training, do this, because this might be your only opportunity to get this training. Hopefully we'll make it available on the web in the future, but I can't absolutely guarantee that. So 2 opportunities, it's no cost, it's 3 hours, and it covers everything that you need for the national standard transition. If you're going to take a traditional refresher course should include this information for you in the program. But if you're doing the CME research, you definitely need to have it, because it's a required additional 3 hours on that CME research application.
You want to speak to their concerns with online instruction while you're touching on the paramedics?
Sure. One of the other things that there was kind of a big hoo-ha about was online paramedic courses. And New York State grants reciprocity to providers who have national registry coming in from other states. And so they allow, if you have national registry, they allow you to apply for reciprocity, they grant it to you. Here's the problem. Some of the programs, national registry, they move their accreditation deadline. So you don't have to be an accredited program to sit for national registry now until 2015 is what it is. And so there are a couple of online programs. One of them is in North Carolina, another is in Massachusetts, and we have a number of providers in the Western New York region who are taking the online paramedic program for whatever their reasons are. They're taking this program and they would then get national registry, and then they would apply for reciprocity back into New York State. There have been providers who have successfully done this. This has created a huge issue down in downstate New York, because the course sponsors downstate are losing students to the Massachusetts program. And then the other issue is what's going to happen with our providers up here. Andy Johnson's position is this: if the program content exceeds 50% online, you will not get reciprocity back, regardless of past practice. So if you apply for reciprocity, even if you have national registry, but you took an online course, you are not going to be granted reciprocity back into New York State. When that happened, there was obviously some issues in the room, because there were those of us who knew that there were providers who were doing this out of the area. out of our area that were taking this. So we've initiated discussion with Andy to try to see if we can make any accommodations for providers who are existing in that situation. There is no answer at this point. It just fell on vital signs, and he did not have the time to meet with us when he was here. Dr. Clemency is all over this, and so we're trying to get this finalized for, sometime in the next couple of weeks. So, but very adamant, 50%. Even though a physician can renew their license 100% online, I think that to be the case or something like that. But they can do all their Con Ed online. EMS providers cannot.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just ask Scott, if there's any explanation as to why New York State's willing to recognize the National Registry certification, but now saying if you obtained it by this means, obtained a registration is obtained a registration.
That's exactly what the argument's been.
No explanation.
At this point, there isn't the argument. The argument to it is that there is no, New York State can't regulate what they don't own. And they own all of the course sponsors, and therefore they have control over the content and the instructors and the people who are teaching it. When you are outside of New York State, they have absolutely no jurisdiction over that, so they can't guarantee the quality of the program or the instructor or any of that. And so their feeling has been that just because the registry moved its deadline doesn't mean that that they have to change what they're doing.
Accreditor is also a phrase they use.
Yeah, well, that's in order to sit for a registry exam, you have to be an accredited program.
Right.
So, just to be clear, if I went to Pennsylvania and obtained a paramedic education that was 51% classroom education, got my national registry, I'm okay to obtain certification in New York State through a reciprocity process. But if I do that same program from New York at 51% online, I'm not.
That is what we understand.
Can I big discussion here because I'm a registered student in that program. With no alternative for ECC, as desperate as we are for paramedics in this region, I understand Dr. Clemency is all over it. I've talked to him extensively last week. He's got lots of information for me. I can cite off 20 different pros for this online program. Like you said, doctors can do it, so why can't paramedics? Paramedic instructors get their degrees online, but paramedic students can't. I mean, I could go on and on. I don't want to spend time doing that. Can I make a motion that the council supports the program?
I think you can make a motion to do anything you want. I think.
Can we discuss? I mean, are people aware of, other than the state, who's probably getting political feedback from the colleges who are losing students at $5,000 a student? Obviously, they're pushing to keep students themselves.
I don't know if it was a political move from what I'm hearing. I was hearing it was coming more from a CMAC standpoint, that they had students who were graduating that never put their hands on a student, or never put their hands on a patient.
Right.
So that was the concern from the CMAC conversations that I heard.
Yeah, there's only one online program right now in the country that is accredited, and it's in Texas.
Yeah. Can we discuss making that motion? I guess I don't really understand how these work. The Lenore program that is the North Carolina program is 1,100 hours. 500 clinical hours still have to be done in New York State. You do 300 ride time hours, 200 hospital hours in New York State with New York State ALS providers. Furthermore, you go to North Carolina for 100 hours for hands-on PALS, ACLS, megacodes, and your final exam. You leave with a North Carolina medic, you leave with a National Registry medic. So technically, more than 50% of the program is not online, because out of 1,100 hours, 600 are ride time and clinical. But now he's saying that 50% of the didactic needs to be not online.
Well, and the other issue, it sounds like this was a downstate issue too, because I'm not aware that it's happened locally, although we've had a couple of hiccups with trying to arrange clinical students through these programs. But the students are often sent back saying you have to establish a clinical relationship with the hospital. So they go into the hospital, they're trying to deal with people, they've got all these affiliation agreements, and what it sounds like many of the hospitals were under the impression that the students who were coming into their programs were actually of the course, affiliated with the course sponsors in the area. So if there were issues with the students, they had no recourse, they had no contact person. And frankly, I can really kind of understand that. you know, if you have a cowboy and you gotta deal with it,
Right.
just knowing the issues that course sponsors have to deal with EMT students, paramedic students all the time, I could see how that might be a problem.
Then what can the council suggest for people who get denied admission into the only paramedic program where the only option is to go online? What's the count? Are we not desperate for ALS providers? I know, how long did it take Wyoming County to get an ALS class? Because you don't have CICs who are ALS providers. I know if we put through the people we currently have at Rural Metro through this program, you'll have 3 more CICs who are ALS providers.
So is your purpose then to bring forward a motion to improve education, to approve the access to education? Because that's your call, and you can make whatever emotion you want.
I guess it was based on the discussion, and nobody's really participating in a discussion.
No, and, I think it's a valid discussion, and it went on ad nauseam at the state council. So that's not the point. The point is I want to make sure it's effectual and not, aggressive. You don't want to attack.
Oh no, absolutely not. I was just gonna
you're
say,
right.
if we get regional councils to endorse it, there's 17 of us? So if regional councils endorse it, how
What
can
if
the
they
state
endorse
then
it?
say
What if
that
they
the
endorse it?
program's valid? If National Registry will acknowledge it, if paramedic instructors get their education online, if you're still doing your clinical time in New York State, if all of the educational studies prove that online education is just as effective as,
Aren't I reading this that the current format's expiring in 2015, so they're even putting a window limitation on it? The current format?
Well, they're gonna
That's
have
for
to address what
accreditation.
happens. I don't know what they would do if they would get an application from the accredited program in Texas. But what shouldn't have happened is these programs that weren't accredited, the paramedic students there likely would not have been able to get National Registry, which would have prevented them from even applying for reciprocity in New York State. But because the registry extended its deadline, that now allows students in these programs to sit for the registry exam, and they would therefore have the instrument that they need to apply for reciprocity back. And to your point, I don't want to encourage you or discourage you from taking a motion or encouraging this body
Right.
to take a position on this. Whatever you feel is the right thing to do, I think you should do. But I will say this, all certification issues are 100% controlled by the Bureau, and they have final say over all certification issues. They could choose to not accept reciprocity, and I think I might even be saying verbatim what Andy said, but they could choose to not accept reciprocity from any state for any reason, and the only reason why they're doing National Registry is because a number of the military personnel who have taken nationally accredited programs are trying to come back into New York State, and that's really why they do it, but they don't even have to do it.
well, I was told that National Registry is irrelevant, that I needed a North Carolina license, and that New York State would accept my North Carolina license as reciprocity.
That is definitely not the discussion that was had at State Council.
I mean, you get both, so it's, doesn't matter, but, so then if the council would decline endorsing the online education, then I don't know. Do we not need ALS providers?
We do, but what he's saying is a council, whether it's this council or the state council, don't have any impact at all. It's the Bureau that decides.
Right, but is the Bureau not affected by 17 endorsement letters from 17 regional councils who all probably need ALS providers? I mean, if it's not, then I drop out of the program. If there's
No,
nowhere for this to go.
I feel your passion, but I'm wondering if there's not a better way to wordsmith that, not just to say to endorse this program, but to endorse the initiative to, bring I don't know, whether it would be the course curriculum up to standards to meet
Right,
what
right.
Andy's looking for, or what?
Right.
But-
I'm dying.
So,
I'm circling the drain.
I have no stake in this at all, but it seems to me to be an incompatible position. We've accepted National Registry as our state's, or national standards as our state standard for certification. We've accepted National Registry as a threshold for reciprocity. The means by which you obtain that threshold seems irrelevant. You've met that minimum standard. We've said it's our minimum standard. They're, at least what I'm hearing, and I wasn't there for the conversation, but the position seems to me to be irreconcilable with our stated.
That's true, saying it's an apple, and now we're saying, okay, but is it a yellow one or a red one? I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that addresses their concern. Their concern was in fact, you know, are they touching patients? Are they having contact? Is it all done online? And that's what they were seeing. I'm thinking it was the Massachusetts class in particular. But they never had to do anything. Was it 100% online?
That was political because it was a downstate issue.
Yeah.
They weren't going to sponsors in New York State, they were going to Mass and.
But that was a 100% online course. To be a paramedic.
That was definitely political. Oh, appropriate.
Yeah, that was-
appropriate,
yes.
And since this one is not, if you're saying that that was, and again, I wasn't at CMAC, I just saw the notes that just said, we're not gonna accept it. So I guess I'm looking for more information from you, from Andy. I tried to meet with them also, unsuccessfully.
Well, there's a new help desk number. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. Because they're so well staffed there. But if his concern was that you're not touching patients and this program has 600 hours of clinicals, why wouldn't the council want to endorse this program then?
I'll entertain a motion.
Again, just discussion. I don't know, just
I work for
discussion.
you. I'll entertain a motion. So what is it you'd like to have the motion state? I'm good. What do you want?
Does nobody else have any thoughts on this? All of the ALS providers, all of the paramedics in the room, nobody else has anything to say about this?
Well, usually you
Just a point of
discuss
order.
it on the question.
What is it?
If she makes the motion and the motion gets a second,
Mhm.
then it's on the floor for discussion.
Right.
I'm sorry, I thought discussion happened first. Okay, so then I make a motion that the council endorse the Lenore Paramedic Outreach Program to SEMSCO.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Okay. We have a motion and a second. So now we're on to discussion. Sir?
Well, one comment. I don't think it would be wise to support a particular program. I think it would probably be more appropriate to oppose the state's rule and to suggest a different approach to it that would, in effect, maybe support this program. But I think it would be the state
Right.
first program. We don't know anything about this program.
And it's, I guess, where I was hoping to say was that I like your idea, and I think we need to do that. You're right, we are desperate in Wyoming County as well, but we need to bring the state
Right, oh
in.
yeah, I mean, whoever's, obviously I'm not a wordsmith. Given my discussion
Jim-
this evening.
Jim, I cut off a second ago.
Well, no, Tony already stated what I was gonna say. This is the first I've heard about it. I only have 4.5 lines here in a paragraph saying, and then I hear hearsay, so I have no clue of the ins and outs of this and what the parameters are, so I would not be voting to support something. I have no idea what's going on.
Can,
Okay, sir.
Has the state issued any formal policy or statement on the subject, or is it just Andy talking?
It was actually a motion, correct?
I asked where the 50% came from and where it could be found. And he said it was in the reciprocity pact, but we've been unable to find it.
Right.
Can we,
But there was a discussion that came before the actual council itself. Did they support the limitation to programs that were only,
I just don't think that's within the council's jurisdiction.
because again, we kept being informed that it came from the Bureau, so thank you for your input, but the Bureau will decide.
just a suggestion, rather than focus on an individual program, can we petition the state for a clear statement of policy on what is accepted, what is not accepted, and something committed to writing, so at least there's a promulgated standard from which people can make decisions.
Okay, so is that like?
I can make it as, an
Yeah.
amended motion,
Yeah.
however we prefer to
Do
proceed.
you want to amend it, or you want to withdraw that and put a new motion on it?
I think this is so far away from the original motion.
Uh-huh.
I would withdraw my second. I would second. Or vote the table or vote it down and then move on.
I believe with motion and second, we had discussion, we can move on to table it, can't we? Yeah, before we take an actual vote, if somebody calls to table it, doesn't that
That takes
move to
precedent.
vote right then? So, is there a motion to table it?
No, I'm not making a motion.
No, but I'm asking the group, is there a motion to table that particular motion to endorse a particular program?
or I can withdraw it. I'm not sure what's happening here.
I
I know,
Yeah.
where's Robert's
I was
rules?
looking at JT.
The only problem with the motion to table is we still have to deal with it.
Yeah.
It becomes old business then.
Tony already said he was withdrawing a second, so now there's second. So if there's no second, the motion died if there's only someone who made the motion.
Well, we can withdraw
If
the
there's-
first, or second, we can withdraw the first then. Is that what you said, you would withdraw?
If she chooses to withdraw her motion, then it's dead, but it's also dead if there's no second, and Tony already said he's withdrawing the second, so you've got just a motion up there, no second.
Well, we're still in discussion, we have a withdrawn second.
Is there more information that I can provide anyone about the program?
Well, again, it's
Well, again, we won't
probably
be
not the
making any
program necessarily, it's
decision
the
on it.
policy.
Okay.
It could be any program. I mean, yours just happens to be one. So
Right.
Your program means nothing to
So-
us, it's more the policy and how they're going to.
We don't have a
Implement,
second, so
right.
right now that motion is dead. Do we move on to any other motions on this project?
Certainly.
An answer?
I move that we petition the state or ask the state for an official policy statement on the subject of reciprocity and national registry specifically with regard to how people obtain their national registry certifications.
Do you want to reference at all the online
Sure.
portion?
However you'd like to craft that into the motion would be great.
I don't think it should matter whether it's online or
Kidding.
national registry throughout the country.
I need a
It
second.
shouldn't matter. There should be
I'll-
one
I'll second
standard
it.
set forth
Right.
across the
So
country.
we have a motion and a second, and now we're discussing.
What was the motion? Just to seek clarification from the state in the form of a written policy statement on the subject of reciprocity, specifically reciprocity for national registry obtained through education, whether online or upstate.
He's recording. Maybe you should take the microphone over there.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so you have a motion and a second, sir.
I have a question, how urgent is this for people involved right now?
There are currently 5 people who just finished the program in November. They took the class final. They're going back down for their New York State, or I'm sorry, their North Carolina certification November 15th. So for 5 people currently, it's urgent. There's 2 who just started in November, and then there's 2 of us who start in January. So it's 9 providers we're looking at who are.
Do you think that that's an evaluation kind of thing? I mean, there's gotta be a syllabus to this course. Isn't that something the Andy would be able to say, okay, well, I'm looking at the syllabus and it meets the criteria?
There is. Dr. Clemency has all that. He's also,
So I guess it's up to him to be your,
yes,
Right.
which we're hoping is happening, but I didn't know if an endorsement from the council would assist in that effort. He talked to preceptor, he got statements from preceptors saying, you know, the online student's just as effective as a brick and mortar student. He's got educational studies that, you know, say 2,500 universities endorse it. ECC itself has online programs. So, you know, how we're questioning the validity of online education when that's how some instructors got their education, when the college itself offers online education. That's just what I'm questioning.
Well, a couple things. I think in some ways you're talking apples and oranges. If you're talking about an original certification of a paramedic, at least in my opinion, you have to touch patients. If you're talking about a paramedic educator, you can learn how to educate online, you don't have to touch students. So I don't think that is a valid argument.
true.
And I'm not sure throwing in the physician piece either, is because again, you're talking about physicians who are already trained. They're just learning more didactic
Continuing
knowledge.
education, yeah.
So it's a different issue. I think the heart of the matter, though, is, if I understand it, is that physicians at the state level are concerned that there are programs out there where paramedics are learning how to take care of patients without touching patients. And I think it's important that the letter we sent to the state highlights that piece, to get the state to declare, is that really the issue? Because if they say, yes, that is the issue, then it really shouldn't be defined by what percent is done online.
What didactic portion?
The didactic portion. The requirement should be that you have to touch patients, which is a different issue from what percent of your education is online. So I think they're hammering a nail with the screwdriver. So I think we need to sort of tease that out and then take a position if we so choose at the next meeting, which is why I asked about time.
Well, would it be appropriate then to have this body request of Dr. Clemency that a letter stating our concern errands on behalf of the practitioners in our region go to the state with our support? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think the motion is for the council to send a letter to the Bureau asking for their position in writing and point in whatever, because we don't know what we're talking about right now. We're talking about rumors and third-hand statements, we're not talking about something that we really know. So I think that's what the request is, right?
Absolutely.
So you're asking for verification?
I'm asking for an objective standard,
Okay.
clarification in the form of the policy statement.
So we have a motion, we have a second to that.
If I could say one other thing, actually a question. Are the institutions that are doing this online education, are they higher education institutions? And maybe some are, but are they high?
I can tell you that mine is a Lenore Community College.
I was gonna say it's community colleges for the most
All
part.
right,
I don't believe the mass program is, I believe that's an independent
Standalone.
business.
all right. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is that the federal, U.S. Department of Education is now, and this is throwing higher eds into a tizzy, is now requiring any higher eds that have a presence in another state to get approval from that state to teach their students. So my point is that a higher ed that's doing online paramedic education for a New York state-based resident technically has to get New York State Education Department, not health, but Education Department approval to do that. So New York State does have some oversight on this issue, and that may be something that we want to point out to the state if you want to take a position.
Okay.
They may say, well, that's state ed, we don't, they're not going to do what we want, I don't know, but it's another argument to throw in there.
Any other discussion?
Probably just as a quick point on this, in CMAC where this came up, it was my perception of the room that Andy was pretty alone on this thing, that the docs sitting around the table were pretty much, those who spoke very much in favor of online learning, and I didn't get a sense at all that the CMAC objected to granting reciprocity to those who take online programs, but it was a very lively discussion. But Andy was pretty much the one defending it, and there wasn't anyone who voiced support that I noticed.
Okay, so we had discussion, we've got a motion, we've got a second. All in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, so we will send out that letter to the state.
You know, I didn't include that in my report. So, just last couple things, our EMS conference is scheduled for May 3rd and 4th. Registration's gonna open on December 1st for that. A couple of other key points from State Council. Version 6 of the paper PCR is going to make its way out to an EMS agency near you in 2015. Use this time maybe to consider going electronic, because the current version of version 6 is 12 pages long. That's per PCR, 12 pages long. And when NEMSIS, they will have to migrate to NEMSIS 3 by that time, which will make it, they are estimating 20 pages in length per PCR. And by the way, I would not be repeating this to anyone if I did not actually have a tangible copy of what the existing 12 pages are. I do have it. And so one of the things that we're trying to work on is to do a group buy, and that might help the electronic PCR transition go a little bit more smoothly and certainly more cost effective for agencies to go that way. I wouldn't delay on this because I'm not kidding you, it's 12 pages. So if you can go electronic, or you're even thinking about it, I would either think about going electronic or retiring, and I'm not sure which is going to affect me.
Would you be willing to sit down with some people and like maybe a focus group to figure out what program
There's only
Especially-
one company that does a group buy. So, the other ones don't do it.
I think before we go,
Scott?
before that, Scott, is there some, again, sort of back to Brian's point with the other thing is not that I doubt that it's 12 pages because I've been watching the NEMSA stuff,
Yep.
but where's truly the guideline? Where's the time frame? You know, we should be able to put out to our providers, this is on the horizon, PCR 6, such and such date, so many pages.
Yeah. That's a great question, and I think it's, the only thing I can parallel this to is the transition to the national standards. It's gonna follow the same thing. If I get a nickel for every time I heard your regional representatives need to be taking this information back to the regions, I would certainly be a halfway wealthy individual through that transition. And it is going to be the same thing, I believe, with this. They are not going to issue anything in writing that says that by this date, this is going to happen. They're going to say, this has been discussed at state council for 3 years. It is your regional representatives' requirement and position to take it back to the regions. Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, did they not make that statement many times during the transition for the education stuff?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is gonna go that same way. I would love for that to come to John, because, you know,
This stuff's gotta be tied to money, is all I got to say, because when they talk about doing the electronic scanning of the PCRs and talk about a heated conversation, why can't we, if we only have this much money in the pocket to spend, why don't we scan those PCRs that are 12 and 11 and get some current data out there? Why are we going back and scanning 2008? We just finished 2008, we're scanning 2009 now. Why do we want old data, get the new stuff, and then where the money allows, go back and get the other? Oh no, because it's tied to federal funding.
Yep.
So they've got to do it in sequential order moving forward.
What does 12 pages consist of?
well,
I mean, are you asking them?
I gotta be
Well,
honest with
it's
you, 12, I think
I
the 12 pages that are
Are we
proposed.
drawing pictures of them?
No, not yet, you have to take, that's the alternate module to DMT class.
Okay, thank you.
Can you take that online?
As long as it doesn't exceed 50%.
Yeah, really.
It probably, if you were comfortable and you knew what was in this 12-page document, it's a lot of not applicable or nones or all that stuff. So, in my opinion, as long as you don't write a narrative, probably the 12-page document will take you less time than the existing 1-page because it's not as much handwriting and the information might be more complete. But it is tied to federal money because you are going to have to tie, get to the NEMSA status sets. But it's 12 pages long. I just don't know what else to say other than it's 12 pages long.
The group buy, you were talking about the tough books, right? There's only one, or whatever, tablet.
Web-based systems that you don't necessarily need a tablet. You could do a brief documentation. We're kind of getting off beat here, but you could do a brief documentation on a small, like, BLSFR thing and then go back to your hall and finish filling it out later. You might do the drop sheet at the hospital. Yes, it is double documentation. I get it, but if you don't want to buy the hardware, this is your way around it. And the group buy, by the way, it behooves us to go in and say we have potential 200,000 records that will go into your system, which then nets our price down. That's what we mean by a group buy. You would have to pay per PCR to do this. So, all right. Do you want to talk at all about the Article 30 changes? Any of that? Okay, so we'll read about that. I'm done with the happy news. So,
Based on Narcan, it wasn't.
oh, hey, intranasal Narcan, everybody CFR paramedic. Jury is still out at this point. I don't know if this is going to be a required thing for all providers to do. That seems to be one of the other new twists, is that when something is added, it's not an optional add, it's a must add. I don't know what's going to happen with Narcan, with the intranasal Narcan, but it is going to follow kind of the same public access defibrillation process, where you have a collaborative agreement, you have a notice of intent, you have to get the REMAC approval. But the policy's not out yet, we can't roll this thing out until the policy comes out. Stay tuned, it'll be coming.
It was interesting, because the people downstate were talking about the fact that if you were in New York City, a cop can come along and get Narcan, but the EMT that showed up, sorry, I can't get that.
Yeah.
So
It hap-
you'd have to call in a cop to do it.
Usually the cops for EMS.
Yeah. And the demonstration project was huge.
Is there anything in writing on this demonstration project?
Actually, yeah, they had handouts on it. Who presented that?
Mike Daly.
Yeah. And why am I thinking 203, 206, and no negatives? Is that right? Monroe Livingston had a lot of information.
Well, I guess my only point is that hugely successful is not a scientific outcome. The fact that they didn't kill anybody is good, but did they help anybody?
Yes. And
Well,
they
they did
actually made them do one of those reports that was a performance-based on the trial. So downstate they had to do it, Monroe Livingston was the other one that presented. And they actually had data about the outcomes.
But did they help somebody that wouldn't have been helped with the old system anyway? So in other words, if you have PLS nasal Narcan, and you have ALS that comes very quickly anyway,
Right.
would the outcomes be any different? So is it worth, is it worth the cost and all the other things that go with it? And I'm not against it.
No, and you know what, from the dumbed-down version, which is me, I'm an EMT, the data that they supplied to us was a cost basis, and the packets they handed out were what? They showed the little demonstration packets that you would carry with you. And basically, no harm if they didn't have opiates on board. If they did have opiates on board, it was a wonderful world. And I'm, like I say, I'm really dumbing it down, but is that basically what you were hearing from the data?
Yeah, I don't know if finance evaluated this at all. Did it make it to your committee?
Nope.
Well, isn't that interesting?
No, it's not.
But, okay.
Yeah,
But controlled
it was-
substances had it.
Yeah, no, that was not discussed. And the data that they brought back, they demonstrated that they had all the data. That was the consensus for everybody. It's, if you use it and it does no harm, then what was the problem? If it doesn't and it solves the problem, then it's a wonderful thing. You've actually corrected a problem, so maybe you haven't got issues going on with that patient as far as
I don't believe the Narcan atomizer is a very expensive
what I think it's
piece of,
$25.
I didn't even think it was that much. The EpiPens are supposed to go off of,
Trademark.
patent, which should help bring their costs down, but they're ridiculous. But I don't believe that the cost of the Narcan is significant. Or, well, that's if you draw it up, though.
Right.
But the pre-fills with the atomizer, I think are, I don't know how much more they are, but it didn't have a significant cost.
Do you want some of those sent to you?
Well,
The reports?
I think it would be good to see, it's a bit complete, I think.
And I think Dr. Bart's probably brought stuff back.
Yeah, I sort of asked him for it, to get some.
Oh, okay. Anything else?
No, I'm not talking.
Okay, yes, sir.
Scott, how many you signed up for that course in Strykersville?
4, and I need at least 12.
Because my question is, I thought we were giving a substantial amount of money to subsidize courses, so I guess my question is, why are they having to pay $80 if we're giving substantial funds? Why aren't the students covered?
We do not receive any money for courses.
Hmm? 100 providers for.
This, this regional council does not have the ability to fund training, and that was the opinion that was given to the chair of this council when she asked the associate director from the bureau regarding previous funding requests that had been submitted, not only by us, but by other entities, to fund training. And it was told to us in writing that it was not a permissible expense because it did not fall within the deliverables of the regional council. So we are not paid to offer training. Our contract, our MOU, our memorandum of understanding with this regional council is to provide other services. I won't say that we don't get extra mileage out of that money, but we certainly provide other services that are clearly stated. One of the items that is not in that MOU is the training plan, which we did, no questions asked. And I would think that if there are specific issues about this, that this is not the forum to have this discussion, that we should have a separate, maybe subcommittee that meets, that might involve the program agency, our chair, and other people who might have an interest in this. But I do not believe that this is the appropriate venue to have this discussion.
We have a steering committee that somewhat has done. Last year, and I did have the numbers written down, we had about 4 people. Bill Stryker was on there, Bill Major was on there, Tony Santoro was on there.
Who was on there?
You were on there,
Cliff
and
Cherry.
I was on there.
And Margaret?
Margaret and Pat Wiseman were on there. It was heavily populated by Wyoming County. We really need to reconstitute that committee, and I guess I would look for volunteers to participate on the committee so we can nail down. I know there are some concerns. I have discussed with other councils around the state what kind of services they're getting. I serve on the finance committee for the SETSCO. And when you look at the various categories, this has been a bone of contention for me because these categories are, this is a generic chart, and they're really inapplicable to a council. They are for program agency, but not for council, because there are some things that we cannot do. We're not supposed to buy equipment like we used to. When we used to have our fire sale, if you will. We can't buy mannequins. We were, prohibited from that. Education, we're not allowed to do education. It's not part of our deliverable. So when we budget and we break out where we're spending money, what I am seeing across the state is professional services are getting the majority of the money because they're funneling the money to other entities. Those other entities are providing the training, the education. Right, wrong, that's why I want to reconstitute the program agency steering committee. So anybody that would like to work on that, that way we can nail down what things we are contracting with our program agency for. That was your volunteer?
Sure.
Thank you. Brian, when that was your volunteer in Victor Jones?
Well, yes, but yeah,
Okay.
I'll challenge that because I think it's a valid question when I'm looking at a proposal, and that's one of the things that's saying no cost, reduce cost trainings up to 100 providers within the Wyoming-Erie region for OFPs offered, examples, ITLs, PLAB, etc. So, I'll challenge, that was a valid question. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Where's the proposal?
One that was presented.
No, that proposal, along with the other proposals that were presented, Jim, were all removed.
We voted at the dinner meeting, I thought.
We can talk about it, but it isn't. I have the MOU right here. It's not in the MOU.
Okay, and Tony, you will serve on it for Wyoming County?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else will, so what do we have to know?
Margaret still want to be on it?
Let me
how can we say yes or no?
Okay, so having said that, I guess we will not be able to help him. Sir?
Have they given us a list of what we can buy?
Your lunch, your supper.
There you go. Meetings. I continually pointed towards, here's your list of deliverables. Yes, we really do have a list of deliverables. And they are to have meetings, to review and vote on CONs, of which those things, thanks. Yeah, we do have a list. And maybe, that's a good entry. Why don't we scan this? This is April 1st, 2010 through March 31st, 2015. You don't want me to read this, you really don't, but how about we scan it and everybody can have it, and if you have any feedback, forward it on to the steering committee to move forward.
Chris, I'll just email it to you. Electronically.
Can you stamp this up?
No, that proposal is not.
No. This is, that's
Are
your
those
proposal.
deliverables to the program agency or those deliverables for the council?
Council had individual.
This was just the same document that I had in my file, that went together.
I'm trying to see if there's a short area here that okay, mailbox,
There's four, I think there's four key items.
quarterly reports, supplies. I am amazed at what some of these councils spend on their awards dinner, $8,000.
Oh, we're having it at the wrong place then.
Yeah. Meeting expenses, $7,100. And that's Southern
Do they
Tier.
put the mileages for this?
$15,000, now that's Westchester. And the confusing thing that I get so frustrated with is some of these are, the council and the program agency basically are one. They share rooms, they share budgets, and literally they will take this $25,000, spend it, and then move on to the program agency money to spend now. So there is no clarity. So when I approached saying, wait a minute, as chair of the finance committee, I'm told $25,000 is what we're gonna get, you know what? That's a misnomer. There is no rule, no regulation, any place. It is a Marjorieism. And that's really what I'm in this room with Nancy Benedetto, who was there like before EMS was felt that way, and she says, well, no, there's no limit. And literally, down in New York State, or New York City, they put in a council budget for $200,000. It doesn't work that way, they paid up 25%. All right, I digress. Anything else? We just discussed that, we had to deny that. Nominations, elections, we've discussed that, Mr. Glass?
It's just nominations. I know the chair position is up, and obviously the chair-elect. I didn't get with, Ann's not here unfortunately. Neil, are you up or not? Are you, because secretary and treasurer are 2-year terms. Is this your first year or your second year? I don't know. I think it's only one.
I don't think yours is up because I think that it alternated.
Right.
Wyoming had 2 positions and Erie had 2 positions, and they staggered so that the Wyoming positions were not at the same time and the Erie were not at the same time.
And you're not up either then, I don't believe.
Secretary and treasurer on the same rotation.
Make a motion for approval.
I just thought I was staying here.
If Ann has something different. But for chair, Mr. Gill has put his name in. So I'll call for, I'll open nominations on the floor for chair. Any nominations on the floor for chair? For the last, any nominations for the floor for chair? I will ask someone to make a motion to close nominations for the chair. We'll open nominations for chair-elect. It needs to be someone from Wyoming County. Anyone from Wyoming County for chair-elect?
You know, Bill's not
You say yes. Who said yes? Good. Good, I get chair.
my president?
Yes, you do. So, Tony says yes. Okay. Thank you, Tony. Any nominations from the floor for chair-elect? Final call, any nominations from the floor for chair-elect? Entertain a motion to close nominations for the floor for chair-elect.
So moved.
Second.
Just say so moved.
Estrella. Anybody else? Second.
All in favor? Right, that being said, we have Greg Gill for chair, Tony Santoro for chair-elect. And we'll make, I was gonna amend the, December 15th, we'll make, December 10th for anyone else who wants to, submit their nomination.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Is that the end of your business, sir?
Yes, Madam Chairman?
Okay.
Person,
I'm
Sorry.
sorry?
Madam Chairperson, sorry.
I'm good. Okay, protocol applications. This is something that if you want to see what a protocol is online, an app for your phone, it is in place of 3 regional councils, mid-state. Do you have the address of Susie's stuff? Okay, you know what?
I
Put
think
it in
it's
the
when
minutes.
CNYEMS.
Yeah. And I apologize, I should have that, but we'll put it in the meeting minutes so that when it's distributed, you guys can pull it up. The golden thing there is rather than putting hard copies of protocols out, printing them, which has become very costly to everybody, and then do you have your protocol on hand? Is it in the ambulance? Do you have a copy of it yourself? What some of these regions are finding, one of these REMACs are finding, is they're putting it onto an online, oh, you're quick. They're getting an app downloaded to their phone, and then it's there, regardless. It's also quicker, I understand, to respond if there are tweaks as far as dosages and things like that that may change in the protocols because of what the REMACs are having, I think is the other issue. Again, there are 3 regions, I think that 3 REMACs right now that have banded together because they have identical protocols and they share an app. Our REMAC has discussed the same thing, putting together an app for the phones using our protocols. And I believe that's something that has been brought forward from the REMAC that they'd like to see. I think you've had some dealings with it, Scott, and the cost currently is projected to be.
Yeah, the original, it's $6,000, and what the REMAC is asking for, because they're an unfunded entity, is they're asking for a 3-way split between the 3 regional councils to fund the app. So it'd be $2,000 per regional council. That is the initial development. The maintenance down the road probably, so for future protocol updates, it will be significantly less. But that's just the lift initially. And I'll tell you that that is significantly less than, there were 2 other proposals that came in, and they approached $16,000 for the initial development of this app. So this is for the droids and for the iOS. So this gets you two different apps, and it's because there's an EMT that and his brother who do this stuff. And it's the only reason we're able to even have this bid that came in that low. So.
And I believe that in central New York was somewhere around $12,000
Yeah.
that Susie spent
That's
out there.
one one of the guys that we got the bid back is the one that does that does their app.
Do you remember how much this council contributed to printing protocol books not that long ago?
We bought a CD recorder, wasn't it?
No,
No.
we printed
These were-
the actual books.
Yeah.
It was almost 4,000.
Yeah.
That was several years ago.
It
I
might have been upwards of 4,500, but I know it was around. It was $6 a book, and we had at least 500 printed. Actually, no, it was 1,000 printed.
Didn't we purchase the equipment to put it on a CD? and
No,
send it
those
back?
were some other training things that we did, I believe.
Right.
But these were actually the protocol books that went out. Yeah, you don't even remember how much we sent out, because that was something that we did do, as a council. And it was an approved expense, I believe, to, print those protocol books. But like I say, in this instance, you don't have to worry about it, you have to go out and print more, it's available. And I don't know anybody who doesn't have a cell phone, although I don't have internet. So, that's, I guess at this point, they're to the approval stage. They're going to discuss it at the next REMAC meeting. We've got a REMAC meeting coming up, right?
20th November.
Okay. So they've decided to go for it, or they're just going to bring it up again in the November meeting?
I was asked to bring it to this body if they would entertain a three-way split, so we kick in $2,000 for total development of cost of $6,000.
Do you know how much the other regional councils pay in support of REMAC?
Getting all the soft spots here. So the
REMAC is unfunded, like we talked about, but REMAC has to have meetings, they have to have meeting minutes, they have to have all kinds of recordings.
it's a theoretical $2,000 three-way split from each of the program agencies. Each of the program agencies kick in $3,000 toward the REMAC.
So that's part of what your contract goes
Yes.
towards,
Yes.
is the support of the REMAC, which is mandatory.
Yes. However, the equitability of that three-way split is, who knows?
I was gonna say the secretarial support, I believe, comes from our program agency.
That's right.
Mailings,
Does not. Mailing and webcast is handled by Big Lakes Program Agency. The website is handled by Southwestern's Program Agency, and the administrative support is contributed by ours.
okay. So I guess if,
I make a motion.
thank you, and the motion is in support of the $2,000 towards the,
One, not to exceed 2,000. Two, equal parts split between the three councils. And three, that there's some kind of, are these just EMTs? I think there needs to be some accountability about their validity to perform this task.
There are
before-
screenshots that I can send to you guys.
Well, screenshots really, and I'm not sure how you evaluate that, but
yeah.
at some point, we have to have some accountability before they enter into this contract.
Is it a
I think
business or an
garage
individual?
toolbox.
Yeah, if this is an individual, I don't know if you can support this, I think they have to show some, it could be an individual running a business, but I think they have to show some track record here for us to support that. So my motion is equal parts, not to exceed 2,000, and that the choice of the REMAC has to show some due diligence about the ability of this organization to produce these maps.
Excellent, so we have that
Second,
in a second.
just like that it's made available at no cost to providers in the region.
Okay, any discussion on that? Sure.
I'm not sure if there's gonna be a contract for this or how it's gonna work, but the REMAC can't contract for the services, so.
As soon as you started saying that, you're right, they can't.
Right, So do all three have individual contracts?
And if it's an individual, who's going to issue the 1099? Is it a business?
Yeah, so,
Somebody's gonna have to enter as a lead. You know, or are we supplementing the program agencies and the program agencies are contracting?
That to me would be the quickest way of doing it, but.
well, but again, though, is it 3 or 1?
Because then even the program agencies would then have to have agreements with one another and.
Well, I know, but what if all 3 say something different?
Oh, like when REMS discontinued?
I don't know.
Couldn't you just do one contract?
And bill back the other 2 program agencies?
You know, well, the contract, you know, it could be, you could list all 3 of the program agencies in one contract, and then just get enough lines at the bottom for everybody to sign off.
Okay.
Okay, and again, it speaks to the validity of
Yeah.
the provider for serving that. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any other new business to come before the council? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, was that a motion to adjourn?
Nope.
Yes.
One more thing, if you look at the bottom of your agenda,
Thank you, yes.
our illustrious secretary has earned his pay and pointed out that January 1st would be our next meeting. I would propose, if this facility is available, and it
Bring music back.
pleases the body, that we have it on January 2nd, Thursday night. If that fits into people's schedules and if this is available.
Okay, we have a motion to change the meeting nights to Thursday, January 2nd. Is there a second?